Okay, good morning, everyone. It's great to see everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Ruth O'Hara and I work in collections and content in the library. And this morning, I'm really excited to talk to you about Maynooth Library's unique collection of material relating to the Northern Ireland Troubles collection. Obtaining and maintaining an archive like our Troubles collections presents challenges and obligations for publicly funded institutions such as libraries. And in addition to looking at some of the practicalities involved in its curation, I also want to consider how libraries can and should contribute to the collective memory and heritage of our society through our collections. Libraries have an ongoing responsibility to actively capture the spectrum of memories of contested eras, such as that of the Troubles. And we do this by conserving with impartiality the sources and objects, not only of our official history or memory, but also of those periods and groups we might want to forget, which perhaps don't reflect well on us, or which represents viewpoints we mightn't agree with, or maybe haven't considered before. So just to give you a little bit of information about the collection itself, in 2018, Maynooth purchased over 600 works of literature, journalism, and ephemera that were published and produced by government, political parties, border community groups, and paramilitary organisations. The items in this part of the collection mostly date to the 1970s and early 1980s, and they were collected by one person, often contemporaneously, without bias or ideological affiliation, and they provide a vivid insight into life in Northern Ireland during this fractious period. And it's great to say this is a growing collection, and we've continued to add to it, expanding its date range and depth to include items dating up to and beyond the Good Friday Agreement. So as a result, it's a remarkably comprehensive collection in terms of representing and documenting the various sides of Northern Irish society, including marginal groups and those on the fringes within the various strands of unionism, republicanism, and beyond, as well as the main political groups. So it constitutes a collection that's therefore unique in the Republic of Ireland, at least. And it's a really interesting collection to work on, as you can probably imagine, not least because of the current political developments. But today, just because of the time we have, I'm going to focus on one piece from the 2018 part of the archive. And this is what we refer to as our murder or honey trap poster. And I'm looking at this because I think it encapsulates not only the uniqueness and power of the collection, but also the practicalities and challenges involved in preserving it and making it accessible. So this poster is just one of over 100 items of political ephemera in the 2018 part of the collection. And these ephemera, they're short-lived pieces that were often produced by those on the sidelines, so paramilitary, political, and pressure groups, who often had limited access to the media for propaganda purposes. Or as in this case with the honey trap murder poster, it was produced in response to a particular event. And ephemera provide unique historical snapshots that can't be captured to the same extent by other sources. So in terms of preservation and accessibility, these pieces often require a specialized approach that can be time consuming and costly. In addition to the ongoing conservation issues, ensuring that each item can be found by researchers involves cataloguers making a series of informed decisions to ensure the creation of cohesive and coherent cataloguing records for disparate material that doesn't always lend itself to cataloguing rules. So if we just look briefly at the poster itself, it's a really evocative piece. It gives us a photographic impression and description of two women who the police wanted to interview in relation to the murder by shooting of 3 off-duty members of the British security forces in Belfast in 1973. And this refers to an incident where 4 soldiers were lured to a house on the Antrim Road in Belfast by 2 women, and then they were shot by IRA gunmen, so hence the honey trap reference. The poster gives the women's approximate ages, their height, and then a description of each one of them. So it says that one of the women was of slim build with thin features and a pointed nose. And the other is described as being well built with a small turned up nose and attractive. And both, it says, were smartly dressed. And I think it's even the terms that are used to describe the women are interesting. One of the issues library staff and archivists often face when working with ephemera is the problem of information absence. But what's unique about many of the pieces in our Troubles collection is their provenance, thanks to our donor. Many of the items are annotated with information about where and when the material was gathered. And this is particularly evident with this poster, where in addition to the facts outlined on it itself, we also have a contemporary handwritten note that you can hopefully see on the slide and is attached to the back of the poster. And it describes in detail the retrieval and reasons for the poster being put up in the first place. And our donor kindly provided a printed version of the note as well. So what does the note tell us? It tells us that the poster was taken from the front gate pillar at 6:15 p.m. on Monday, the 26th of March, 1973, from that house in Belfast, where 3 days before the murder of a soldier had occurred. And the number of the house is even given, but not the entire address. I think it's the little details that make the note so powerful. So we know our donor was on his way to collect a parcel at 6:05 p.m. when he spotted an army patrol. He describes 2 Land Rovers full of soldiers outside the house. He goes on to describe the scene, which appeared to be a routine check of a work driver's car. But on his way back with his brother-in-law, the patrol was gone and 2 posters had been secured to each gate pillar. Realising that the glue would still be wet, and indeed you can see the remains of the glue, particularly on the back of the poster, his brother-in-law carefully peeled it off the pillar. We're told he couldn't take both sides because a mother and child were reading the other one. And he just finishes off with describing it as a great souvenir from the scene of a terrible crime. So the poster itself is important and astonishing. It's an artifact of an horrific and relatively recent real-life event. But the additional detail provided by the accompanying note, particularly that juxtaposition of the mundane, heading to pick up a parcel with the image of a worker being stopped by 2 Land Rovers full of soldiers, and that's described as routine, and a woman and child reading the poster outside where the murder had happened, I think provides an unrivaled insight into the lived reality of a society in conflict. So conserving and cataloguing pieces of ephemera like this, which are like anything else in our collection, alongside more traditional sources, necessarily has implications in terms of staff resources, expertise, and appropriate storage space. Even from this one example, it's apparent that it's a fragile piece. It's a single sheet that was individually produced with unique characteristics. And the text needs to be preserved and housed properly to ensure it's not damaged, but also to ensure that it can be accessible by researchers. So engagement with our colleagues in Maynooth Library's conservation departments is ongoing, and repair work is carried out whenever needed. And bespoke housing is also created to accommodate items of different sizes that are in different states of repair and which are often made from different materials. And just to give you an example of the different type of material we have, so the requirements of housing, say, an A3 murder trap poster and other oversized posters differ to those, say, from these Ulster Constitution Party stickers, which are amazing in themselves for the fact they've survived. And again, thanks to our donor, they've a note explaining that they were taken from a drain pipe in Belfast city centre in 1972. And then there's also something like this prayer leaflet from the Scripture Gift Mission. And this is pro-Republican annotations, both on the front and the back. And you want to make sure that these are accessible and can be seen by researchers. So in the majority of cases, our conservationists made Mylar conservation pockets and housed the ephemera in specially made conservation box files or paper folders. The honey trap poster is kept in an oversized archival box that guarantees storage stability, but also ensures that both the poster and the note are accessible to researchers. And together with the rest of the collection, it's held in a temperature-controlled storage access area that allows for easy consultation, but also maximum protection. But in addition to these specialised conservation requirements, we also have to provide timely access to descriptive and easily discoverable cataloguing records. And our approach was to provide a high level of access, applying cataloguing rules on marked fields that you can hopefully see on the screen now. But as cataloguing time was limited, we wanted to keep the amount of detail down to a sensible amount. But a collection that includes a significant amount of ephemera and other sensitive and controversial items doesn't always fit easily with the familiar conventions of cataloguing, especially because in the Republic at least, Maynooth might have the only copies of these short-run prints, as is the case with our murder honey trap poster. Continued growth of interest in and appreciation of the worth of integrating ephemera into library collections means that there are standardised cataloguing practices that focus on how to handle things such as absent bibliographical information and controlled vocabularies. And any local decisions were augmented through consultation with other institutions such as the National Library of Ireland or Linen Hall in Belfast. But decisions still had to be made for each piece regarding whether to catalogue items individually or at a collection level, what access points to use to make sure our researchers could find the items, and what level of detail to include. And this required knowledge of the historical period, which often had to be supplemented by further research, as well as an understanding of the physical items themselves and how users might actually search for them. So for things like election leaflets and small pamphlets, which we have a lot of in the collection, where there was more than one item of a similar nature, we made a collective entry for a group of items rather than an individual record. But for single items such as the honey trap poster, these were catalogued individually. And the information in the poster itself informed the catalogue or devised statement, the title statement, the publication details, and also its physical description. And you can see that on the slide. But for us, it was the local note fields, the 500 fields, that were particularly important because they allowed us to provide a full description about the unique characteristics of the poster. These notes enables the factual recording of the background to the piece as provided by the donor. And this is then supplemented with reference to a secondary source. So we have David McKittrick's book, Lost Lives, and this references the murder detailed on the poster. And then we use things like Library of Congress subject headings to ensure retrieval and access. So by taking this approach, the collection was allowed to speak for itself without, in as much as possible, the imposition of cataloguers' conscious or unconscious bias. And then finally, running numbers were given to each item as opposed to Dewey Decimal numbers. And this is in keeping with the numbering system used in our special collections archival material. So a coherent and well-structured sequencing system has to be used and devised. So we use prefixes, which help to group like materials with like to assist with borrowing and retrieval. And if you can make out there in the 852 field, the honey trap poster is located at SP, so Special Collections, TCNI, Troubles Collection Northern Ireland. It's a large format and it's number 7 of our large format items. So by providing such metadata and access to ensure researchers can properly investigate this period in Irish history, I argue that libraries can help stay the endangerment of the cultural memory that's captured, particularly in these unique items of ephemera. Together with the academic community, libraries and other so-called memory institutions must be active in recognising and recovering a plurality of experiences and the texts that convey them, and to make allowances for the fact that while we have a shared past, we mightn't always have a shared memory. Maynooth University Library made a conscious decision to acquire this archive and to actively grow it, although fully aware of the practical issues that I outlined above and the challenges in documenting the recent past, not least because the interpretation of objects and events they represent is often contested in terms of significance, meaning, and responsibility. We didn't hold anything like the material contained in the Troubles archive, a significant proportion of which was produced by illegal organisations in the 1970s. In addition to examining how to catalogue and provide access to the items, we're also faced with questions about how to exhibit and promote images, such as our wanted poster, or something like this UVF banknote with the image of Gusty Spence on it, or a striking Bring Back the Tans poster that was produced by the Red Hand Bureau. Or on the other hand, we have some Republican prison art and propaganda in the form of Christmas cards. So it's the case as well that many of the victims and families of the events that are depicted are still alive, and the perpetrators as well, maybe. And this has ramifications for issues such as copyright and data protection. But despite these concerns and issues, when it comes to displaying these items, we do have a duty to ensure that the images are not censored or diluted. And we shouldn't shy away from exhibiting challenging material or images. We should give access to multiple voices and contexts through our collections and ensure that material is equally available through things like public exhibitions, where a balanced selection of material that's not sensationalist, but reflects a diversity of opinion is displayed in an historical and factual context. Maynooth University prides itself on being a neutral space with no affiliation to any side in the Northern Ireland conflict. And therefore, it has the freedom to collect without fear or favour and not to shy away from challenging or controversial material. A choice was made to move away from unthinkingly preserving the voices of those who might understand or may be traditionally aligned with, or who may have faced the threat of deliberate erasure. And I think this is shown in the breadth of our Troubles collection. To ensure an accurate reflection of an era or a place, we should strive to preserve the voices of all communities. But accommodating different viewpoints and overcoming inherent bias in our knowledge systems isn't unique to the library community. And as publicly funded institutions, we must ensure equality of access to all our collections. For this reason, we continue to go beyond the care and conservation of the collection and work with our academic partners to maximise the collection's integration into the research and teaching goals of the university and into the life of the community in general through things like exhibitions and public lectures, things that we can start thinking about again, thankfully. And also what the past 2 years have shown is the importance of being able to access our collections online. And we'd hope to, in the future, to digitise the Troubles collection, again, to allow greater quality of access and to aid better preservation of the items. So I've only really scratched the surface of a diverse Troubles archive in Maynooth. And I think by growing and making the collection available, Maynooth will play a vital role in offering a bridge to those interested in finding out what happened and what was really written and produced during this turbulent period in our history. And we really do look forward to welcoming and facilitating researchers to use the collection in order to enrich our understanding of our history and our shared past. Thank you very much.